Let me tell you a secret no one talks about. The students who study 10, 12, sometimes even 14 hours a day. They're not motivated, they're not disciplined, they're brainwashed, and they did it on purpose. If you think the key to top performance is just waking up early, making a to-do list, or forcing yourself through some productivity hack, you've already lost. Because the top 1% students don't try to study. They need to study. It's programmed deep in their brain like a reflex. Now, let's break this down clearly. There's a reason most people fail to study more than 2 to 3 hours without burning out. They rely on willpower, which is a temporary battery. But top students, they build an internal addiction loop around studying. They replace dopamine from distractions with dopamine from progress. And once that switch is flipped, they can't stop. You might think, isn't that unhealthy? Not if you control it. In fact, brainwashing, when done with awareness, is the ultimate form of mental weaponry. It's how soldiers are trained. It's how cults capture minds. And it's how toppers in any field dominate the competition without ever feeling like they're suffering. Let me explain how it works. First, you have to destroy your old identity. If you still see yourself as a student who tries to study, you're operating from weakness. Top students create a new self-image. I am the kind of person who cannot live without learning. They say it out loud, they write it down, they repeat it so often that their brain accepts it as truth. This is called identity reprogramming, and it's the first step. Not motivation, not productivity tools, but changing the character you believe you are. Because once the brain believes something about itself, it will fight to prove it right. That's why a lazy student struggles to be consistent, because deep down they believe they're lazy, and that belief is stronger than any productivity hack. Now here's where it gets darker. Top students use emotional anchoring. They link pain to wasting time. They visualize failure so vividly, so painfully, that it becomes terrifying. They imagine the regret of seeing others succeed while they stay stuck. They turn that fear into fuel. But they don't stop there. They also link pleasure to studying, and this is where the addiction starts. They trick their brain into seeing every study session as a level up, like a game, like XP being earned, not because studying is fun, but because the brain craves progress. They reward themselves mentally for every hour completed, not with food, not with scrolling, but with internal pride, with the silent satisfaction that they're becoming untouchable. And slowly, their brain starts craving that feeling more than dopamine from distractions. This is how they brainwash themselves, by hijacking their emotions, rewriting their identity, and manipulating their own dopamine system. And no, this isn't natural. It's not something they're born with. It's learned. It's designed. And if you learn to design your mind this way, studying for 10+ hours won't feel like a chore. It'll feel like a need, like breathing, like survival. This isn't discipline. It's mental engineering. And once you unlock it, you won't just become a good student. You'll become addicted to progress itself. So, if you've been struggling to stay consistent, it's not because you're weak. It's because you haven't rewired your brain yet. But once you do, everything changes. 1. They create a mental virus, identity override. Top students implant one dangerous idea into their brain and let it take over. If I don't study, I will lose everything. This belief acts like a virus, spreading into every corner of their mind. It infects their sense of self-worth, their emotions, and their daily decisions. They stop seeing studying as something they should do. They start seeing it as something they must do. How? They repeat it until it becomes their reality. daily affirmations, self-talk, writing it down 100 times. This isn't motivation, it's mind control. They deliberately erase their old self-image, the lazy, distracted, weak version. And every time they sit down to study, they're not just doing a task, they're proving to themselves that the old version is dead. That kind of psychological warfare, that's what gives them hours of unstoppable focus. 2. They use dopamine manipulation, rewire the reward circuit. Most people use dopamine to feel good. Top students weaponize it. They know that dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's about motivation. So they rewire their brain to associate dopamine with learning. How? They treat every study session like a level up. They track hours. They create streaks. They visualize themselves outgrowing their competition. And the biggest trick? They cut off all artificial dopamine first. No scrolling, no video games, no mindless YouTube. So their brain is forced to find pleasure in real growth. And when their brain adapts, it starts craving study time. Not because it's fun, but because it gives the purest, rawest dopamine hit, progress. 3. They use emotional pain as a weapon. While most students avoid pain, top students use it. They let it burn them. Because nothing changes you faster than pain. They imagine their future failing. They imagine being average, forgotten, regretful. They visualize waking up one day and realizing they wasted their potential. They feel that terror intensely until avoiding that future becomes non-negotiable. This creates what psychologists call a pain-push drive. It's the same drive that addicts use to quit or soldiers use to survive. When you make pain your trigger, you don't need a timer. You don't need a YouTube video telling you to start. Your own fear becomes your engine. 4. They ritualize the study process until it feels holy. Top students don't try to study. They ritualize it. Every session begins with the same steps. Same desk, same setup, same time. New treaters still straights waste Turks. This builds a neural pathway in the brain that says, when I do this, I enter study mode. It becomes automatic, like brushing your teeth. You don't need to think, you just do. And because they repeat the ritual every day, their brain starts craving that environment. They turn studying into a sacred routine. That's how hours pass without resistance. They're not deciding to study. They're just following a programmed script. And once that script is embedded, 10 hours feels like flow. 5. They don't stay motivated. They delete all alternatives. Here's the final truth. Top students aren't surrounded by temptations. They eliminate everything that breaks focus. Notifications? Off. Distractions? Blocked. Toxic people? Removed. Even comfort? Reduced to minimum. Because they understand, you don't rise by having more motivation. You rise by having fewer escape routes. They lock themselves in an environment where the only available option is to become better. This is called burning the boats. No retreat, no safety net, only forward. And when your brain sees that studying is the only source of purpose, pride, and progress, that's when it surrenders. That's when brainwashing is complete. So let's recap the top student brainwashing formula. Destroy your old identity. Rewire your dopamine system. Use emotional pain as fuel. Build unbreakable rituals. Eliminate all alternatives. This is not normal advice. This is psychological reprogramming. You're not becoming productive.